I don't. There you are. Charlotte, hi.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. This is Bonnie Martin,
Hi.
and we have had technical difficulties. It's incredible. So we're keeping our fingers crossed here to see if we can finish a conversation. Um, and Charlotte Kaufman is here with me today to talk about my new book, Not Done Yet. And she's read it, and I have no idea what she has to say about it, but I'm going to find out pretty soon. Charlotte and I met like 4 years ago at an Amy Ferris writing workshop. And then Charlotte hosted another one of those workshops where she lives in Mammoth Lakes, which is fabulous. So we've been connected through our writing. So Charlotte, thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? This is my pleasure. I mean, Bonnie, like you said, we met through an Amy Ferris writing workshop. And I know that we're both very much into empowering other women. So I'm the founder of Women Who Sail, which is the largest online group of women sailors in the world. I really, really am excited about anything that's going to help other women. And when you messaged me and said like, hey, you want to read my book? I was like, yes. Yes, I want to read your book. Hold on, I have to hold it up. Let me get it in the camera here. Not Done Yet: How Women Over 50 Regain Their Confidence and Claim Workplace Power. I know that we're on your channel, so I know that people watching know you, but I have friends who are watching and are tuned in. And do you think you could just like tell us who you are, please, Bonnie? So introduce yourselves to the people on my end who are watching.
Okay. Well, I am an executive coach and speaker and host of the podcast Badass Women at Any Age, which airs every Tuesday on Apple and wherever you listen to your podcasts. As an executive coach, I focus my work on helping women understand their talent, their ambition, and just owning who they are, empowering them to really step up and own that authentically who they are, to make a difference, not only in the workplace, but in the world. My first book was The Politics of Promotion: How High Achieving Women Get Ahead and Stay Ahead. And this book, which just came out like a week or two ago, is Not Done Yet: How Women Over 50 Regain Their Confidence and Claim Workplace Power. And it's all about empowering women, really empowering women of any age, to do what it takes to stay at the top of their game and step into their badass courage and just be who they are.
Can we talk about how completely appropriate, I mean, always this book is, but like right now, with the pandemic, we're in what I've been hearing called a she session. This pandemic is just affecting women so much more than men, women of color, even more so. Talk to me about how appropriate this is for this moment. I mean, it's kind of like, if you were going to have a book come out, talk about the right moment for this to apply.
Well, so many hundreds of thousands of women have lost their jobs, and women of all ages have lost their jobs. I think that what's really important to note is that for those women who are in the 45, 50, 60 plus category who've lost their jobs, it's so hard to get another job. And so this book is really helpful in that way, in that it helps women to position themselves to land a new job, to lead with their value and to own that, and not necessarily be sidelined by all the ageist stereotypes and bias that we see in society every day.
Yeah, I have to say, when I first got it, the cover of the book says how women over 50 regain their confidence, but you mentioned of any age, and I'm 41. And when I read the book, I couldn't tell you how much I already felt like pertinent and personal to me. There's this idea of gendered ageism. So which is like, would you define gendered ageism as like sexism plus ageism? Is that where we're at with it?
That's where we're at. So like our whole careers, we've been faced with gender bias. And especially in the workplace, where we don't have equal opportunities for sponsorship and advancement, and we're not paid equally, and today is equal pay day. So there you go.
Yeah.
And now that we show visible signs of aging, we are now subjected to ageism. And it's a combination of both sexism and ageism, because for women, we are scrutinized, our looks are scrutinized much more powerfully than men. And so we face gendered ageism earlier than men because of the emphasis on our looks and our appearance. It's called lookism, right? And what happens is that as we show visible signs of aging, we are marginalized. We're viewed in the workplace and in society as having less value. No one wants to seek out our opinion, and our workload is redistributed, and we no longer have a voice. We become invisible. So
that lookism, it drives me nuts. So I'm 41. My husband is 42, and he's getting like the grays, in his beard here. And it's just like, the way society talks about that is like silver fox, super attractive, really hot. And then not so much for women, like we're not getting, there is this movement right now of women. It's super hot right now to have like the white and the gray and the silver hair. But I fully recognize that as a fad. Within 5 years, that could not be. And we're back to where we started with this. What did you call it? Lookism?
Yeah, and speaking of that fad, there's so many young people who are dyeing their hair gray. But they're not doing that to look old. I think they're doing that to say, hey, I can still look pretty hot with gray hair. It's not a statement like, I'm 30 and I really want to look 60. I mean.
Yeah. You mentioned something called the double whammy. I think that's what this is like, it's both the ageism and then the gender bias. That I see another double whammy just in ageism itself, with the way that people perceive us, but then our own internal struggle, how we've internalized the society that we live in. So it's this double whammy of you're fighting your own fears, your own internal struggle, where you've got also the discrimination coming from the outside. So frustrating.
Well, it is, because the limiting beliefs that we have and some of these ageist beliefs that we hold actually hold us back. They become self-fulfilling prophecies, right? If we think we're too old to compete or get a raise or get a new client, if we're a consultant or something, then we're not going to necessarily do what it takes to position ourselves to get that new business, to be marketable. And we don't even realize, because it's subtle, that we have internalized these stereotypes and beliefs and the way that they hold us back. And that's what we can control, right? We can control our mindset. We can't change society overnight. I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this book is to bring more awareness to gendered ageism, because I think it's under everybody's radar. But what we can control is our own attitude and our mindset.
I'll use myself as a case study for this, because I'm just going to be honest and disclose how I came to you and said, Bonnie, I want to talk about your book, but I'm scared. And here's what I was scared about. I get so nervous about being on video. Like, there was this, I want to do this thing, but then there's this technology where it's like, oh, it's a barrier. And I thought, oh my God, I'm like a case study in your book, right? Like there's this thing that's holding me back. So I had to admit it to you. And you talk about this, you talk about a couple of ways of getting around it. Like you talk about networking, mentoring. Like what are some of the ways that you can take a look at these things that are like, that make you feel like there's a barrier and step out of the barrier? Because I reached out to you for help, but you talk about a couple of ways of addressing stuff like that. Scary stuff.
It's scary stuff. And because it's scary, Charlotte, we don't look at it. We don't look at it. So the first place to start is to really examine some of our beliefs around aging, some of our fears around aging, and recognize that these are things that can hold us back from living a full life, from having a fulfilling career. But first, we really need to identify what they are. And then we can move beyond it. Because like anything with limiting beliefs, I mean, we all have limiting beliefs about everything. Men, it doesn't matter what your gender is. But it depends on how much energy we give them. And do we fuel those? And if we're giving them a lot of energy, then they have the potential to sabotage us. If they pop up and say, oh, I'm too old to do that. I'm never going to be able to do that. And we say, that's just a limiting belief that I'm not going to pay much attention to. Just kind of acknowledge it and push it aside.
Yeah. I have been trying to like push myself outside of my comfort zone. Like you're saying, like acknowledge it and then still push forward. And it helps because I'm 41 and I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I see the way they interact with technology. And I read that video is just like the future. It is the future. But my comfort zone is not there. So I've had to have this conversation with myself of like, you know what? If you want to stay connected to your kids or your grandkids or your job, you've got, this is a comfort zone thing you've got to push yourself outside of. So thanks for being there for me. Thanks for helping me.
The key is really to stay curious, right? There's a chapter in the book about cultivating your growth mindset and recognizing, like in your case, what kind of technology do I need to be up on, right? What are my fears about doing that? And then kind of jumping in. But even in the workplace, what are some skills you need to improve? And what are some new skills you need to learn? Even thinking about what may be some future trends in your industry and really being proactive and stepping out of your comfort zone and get some training and take some courses and learn about it. And then also you are in the position to help others. And that positions you as being much more visible and credible when you're mentoring others.
Speaking of mentoring, I have all these sticky notes around my screen for ideas to talk about. And one of them is mentoring. And you mentioned actually possibly getting like a younger mentor. And that was just like what a great idea. Yes, mentor down, but like get a Gen Z mentor. What a great way to step out of your comfort zone. And then you also mentioned in your book that the more you kind of like push back against the idea of getting a mentor, the more you probably need it. You probably need to do it. So insightful.
I think that's true. But I mean, it's pretty dangerous to think that we have all the answers and we don't need to learn anything new, or we can't learn anything new from somebody younger than our. But what keeps us from doing that is not only our comfort zone, but we have stereotypes. We put people in categories based on their age and gender and education and religion, and then we make assumptions about them, and that's scary to reach out. It's like, well, why is a Gen Z even going to want to talk to me, right? Or
right.
As a boomer, why would a Gen Z even want to talk to me? But when we reach out and we make these personal connections, those assumptions and limiting beliefs, they dissipate because you're getting to know people one-on-one. You're really getting to know them as people, not as somebody who lives in that category.
You know, I got a lot of interest when I was promoting this from not just women, but men. 3 men this morning in my work meeting said, "Oh, I'm really interested in watching your thing today." You know, with Bonnie Marcus. Have you noticed that men have been interested in your book and in this topic?
From a couple of tips. First of all, I think men are curious about what women are thinking, you know, where their head's at and what they feel about aging, especially aging in the workplace. And so I think there were a couple of reviews on Amazon of men who said that male leaders should definitely read this book so that they understand where women are coming from, and therefore they can help support them, right? But I think it's really interesting because men face ageism as well. They don't face it as early as women, but they're also looking for tools on how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. We all feel that. We feel it. Yeah. If you mentioned that male leaders, somebody recommended for them to read the book. Do you have any advice for allies? So somebody who is watching this right now, and they're in their late 20s and they want to help, they want to be a good ally, you know, or a man. What are some ways to kind of address this in the workplace?
Well, I think it's important, you know, for leaders in organizations to take a really good look at first of all, the ageist beliefs that they hold, because in very maybe overt, but certainly subtle ways, that affects the policies of your organization. It affects the way you are communicating as a leader. So the first place to start is to really do that self-reflection and say, as a leader, who's interested and who knows that diversity, equity, and inclusion are important, where do I stand, you know, on these issues, especially gendered ageism? And then to help your organization move forward with making sure that gendered ageism is included in some of the unconscious bias training, because it's really under the radar and it's not there. I think it's important for leaders in an organization to facilitate cross-generational networking, to facilitate cross-generational mentoring, so that people of all generations can find allies and champions and can learn from each other.
That's super helpful. Yeah, I was doing a little bit of reading on this, and what I read was that a lot of companies right now are looking at their diversity, equity, and inclusion statements, but very few of them are actually talking about ageism or even including it. And you're saying go one step even further and make sure it's gendered ageism that you're also addressing as well. Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. When I talk to people who write books, and I love books, I'm just going to hold your book up again. I have started asking them, what is a question you wish someone was asking you about your book? Like, is there something that you know, when I'm in an interview with you, I haven't talked about yet, that you want to talk about with this book?
Good question. I guess what motivated me to write it?
Yeah.
And as an executive coach, I was working about 4 years ago with a 58-year-old female attorney who worked in Silicon Valley. She worked for a large tech firm. And she had been on the legal team for 8 years. And she was a great asset, star performer. She had always done really well. Of course, now over that term of 8 years, she realized that she is now the oldest on that team, and certain things were starting to happen. She wasn't invited to some key meetings. People didn't ask her opinion anymore. What was really critical was that her workload was redistributed, and some of her clients, some of her work was given to younger colleagues. And why that's dangerous is that if you don't have a full portfolio, it's much easier to start to push you out of your position. And I started to think, is this an isolated incident, or is this happening to a lot of women like 50 plus? And I started to do research, and of course came upon, ageism, gendered ageism, but there really wasn't much about, in particular, gendered ageism. So I started to interview women about this topic, and that's when I got really passionate about it, because in some cases their treatment in the workplace, so horrific, demeaning comments, just made to feel invisible and have no value. It's like, with each birthday, you're becoming less competent. And I wanted to do a lot of research about this to show, first of all, the scientific evidence that is not necessarily true, that a lot of things improve with age. But I wanted to build awareness around this issue. I wanted to give women a voice, and I wanted to give them the tools to be able to deal with this.
It looks like we froze there for a second. One of the things that I liked about your book, because you're saying you wanted to help women, is that it feels like a pep talk. It really, it is encouraging and motivating the way that you have written it. Thank you very much.
Well, that was my intention, was for it to sound like I'm your girlfriend and I'm this conversation with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt understood. Like, definitely. I was like, oh, okay, she understands me, and then she's going to help me out. And I love that you included a section on dealing with gendered ageism comments, because there's talking about this and this, like, oh, it's an interesting topic, but then there's living it. And it's hard when you're in a meeting and the comment comes through. I just was in a meeting the other day, and this is in the sexism, right? Not the gendered ageism, but women deal with comments all the time where I said an idea, and a few minutes later, after discussion, a male colleague said, "Great idea," other male colleague's name, but it was my idea. I had just said it, and I actually sat there thinking, should I say that was my idea? But I was worried that I would then come off across as pushy, or annoying or whiny. So maybe we could talk a little bit about some advice on dealing with it in the moment. When people are, when they make an old fogey or they make a comment that's hard to deal with, right when it happens. You can always afterwards think about it.
Right.
But what about in the moment?
Well, first of all, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think that when people make comments like that, it's just so widely accepted in our society as a funny thing to make fun of old people. And you look at birthday, they're ridiculous. And it's always this joke about, I need a glass of wine before I can, So I think we need to give people the benefit of the doubt that they're not necessarily being malicious or intentional about it. And if that's really the case, and you feel that person is not trying to malign you in any way, you can address it just, head on and say, that remark that I must have been around with Abe Lincoln really made me feel, when you said that, that made me feel, and I want you to know that's ageist. What that does is it not only helps you to stand in your own personal power when you do that, but you're helping them become more aware of their bias. And so I think we need to help people understand that ageism is just so ingrained in the way we think and behave that we need to bring attention to it in in a gentle way. It doesn't have to be like super aggressive, but I think it's important to bring that up.
So bring it up. Okay. Next time I'll bring it up. I try, but man, and maybe it's just this past year, but I feel tired.
Yeah, we all
really before we go, Bonnie, I just have to show everybody something really cool about your book. Okay. So first of all, it's beautiful. But one thing about me is when I read hardback books, I take off the cover. So
yeah.
Bonnie sends me this book, and I get, it was signed, it was beautiful, and I take off the cover, and there's this little surprise. Look at this. I love this. What a great touch.
I know.
Oh, Bonnie,
this is done yet.
Yes.
It's not done yet.
That's right. Thank you for talking to me today. Before we go, you mentioned that you have a podcast. Can you tell me what that is again, so that people watching, like, they can listen to you every week?
Yes, the podcast is Badass Women at Any Age, and it airs every Tuesday. And I have the pleasure of interviewing women from all over the world, but women who tell their personal stories about how they arrived where they are today. In some cases, it's some pretty incredible challenges, and in others, it's just that these have been their experiences, and this is what they've learned. But the stories, Charlotte, are so inspiring and really empower us to own, our own story and the power of that. So yeah, I love doing this podcast. And I need to give a big shout out to I Am Music Group out of LA, who's not only helping us do this Go Live thing, but they produce my podcasts, and they are so wonderful. If you're thinking of a podcast, I want everybody to go I Am Music Group and check them out.
Awesome. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sending me this book, for writing the book. And then when I called you and said, hey, I want to talk about this book, like, doing it with me. Thank you, Bonnie.
Well, and we overcame this technical fear that you had. So
I think it's always going to be with
you.
A
lot today.
Oh, Bonnie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for reading the book. Thank you for spreading the word. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to sharing this as well.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening.